Hey, good afternoon, good morning. Um, Let me know if you can see what I'm doing here. If you can see me live, because I thought I was live, but I just got a message that maybe I'm not live. So let me know. But I think I'll be able to see it on my phone today, which is great. So as soon as I see it, I'm going to start. Um, just watching. Okay, so I can see myself, so I think we're good to go. Happy Friday. Today is July 15th. I like doing these at noon. Thanks, Amit. Um, I like doing them at noon. I try to do them at a time that I can reach the most amount of people. So those of you on the West Coast who are coming in and you're having your second coffee, maybe at 9 or 10, I appreciate you being here. And for those of you coming in from Hawaii, which I get several people, that's awesome. And I appreciate all of you. Give me a little thumbs up. Good morning to everybody out there. We're going to dive into a fun topic today. Let me just switch over here really quick to my captions. I want to turn this guy off here in a second. There we go. Okay, I got that caption that runs across the bottom, and sometimes I forget to turn it off, but we're good to go. I'm Neil McDonnell. I'm the president of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce, and welcome to my LinkedIn Live every day, where I discuss processes and procedures for you to achieve success in the federal market. I spent 20 years as a small business owner, and since 2018, I've been teaching people just like you that government contracting is not a secret, it's just a process. That process goes from A to Z, and when we follow a process, we get what we expect out at the end. Today, we're going to be talking about the process for dealing with tough meetings, ones where we encounter resistance or objections. And so we're going to dive into that today. Before we get too far into it, I do want to ask you to help me, your teammates, your buyers, remember who you are by putting your company name and your core competency, 2 or 3 words, into the chat so we know who you are. The more we do this, the more consistently we do this in the same way, the easier it is for other people to remember you, and the easier it is for them to say something about you, refer you to different people, et cetera. So I've made a couple of introductions. I've watched those of you in the community make introductions, and it's super exciting for me because I know that we are all growing as we continue to do that. Okay, so I got that scroll thing off. I'm heading on into the topic of the day. And as we get into objections and resistance, one thing I wanted to bring up and just remind us is this bell curve. Let me make sure I'm showing it here. So this bell curve, I call it the adoption bell curve. It comes from a technology bell curve way back in the day. But the one thing to remember about today's topic is along the bell curve, what I'm really addressing is the early majority. The people in the late majority and the laggards over on the right-hand side of the bell curve, the objections and resistance are legitimate and you're not going to sell them. That's just the way the bell curve works. If those people in the late majority ever buy from you, it'll be long after objections. They're only going to buy when they see that you're the only option kind of thing. It's a huge thing on there. And then the innovators and early adopters on the beginning of the bell curve on the left, those people are going to buy from you no matter what. Because you've done the right things, they believe what you believe in. So today's topic is really trying to address the early majority where they're not trying to be difficult. They just have objections that come up. They just say things that seem like they're resisting participating with you in a sales meeting. But if we pay attention to them and their needs and we address the concerns they have, then we're going to be able to go after that early majority market. And so it's that 34% chunk is what I'm really going to be talking about today. I've said this in multiple videos, and I really like driving this point home that people like to feel powerful and in control. It's just something we feel. We're not walking away saying, I want to be powerful and I want to be in control. We just by our very nature want to, because the more control we have of a situation, theoretically, the less risk that we're having to face, right? And so if I can lock my doors, I feel safe when I go to sleep. I feel in control of the security of my family. And little things like this are just ingrained in us from the fight or flight part of us, right? And so one of the ways, there's 2 ways we can feel powerful and control when we're working with others. We can either hold people down or we can help them up, right? So some of us are just jerks or accidental jerks and we're holding people down. We're just not being helpful. Most of us are helping people up, and that gives us a boost in how how powerful we feel. We feel like if I lift weights up above my head, I feel powerful in my muscles and my strength. If I help you get up, I feel like, hey, look what I'm able to do out there. I'm able to help somebody else. This makes me feel good, right? Powerful is not dominating. It's a good feeling. And so knowing this, when we go into meetings and we're dealing with objections or resistance, we need to help these people switch to the helping part, right? Help them be in control by helping us. And if you learn about this and know more about it, then you'll really be able to see more success in meetings. You can study more about that whole concept that I'm talking about in a book by Dale Carnegie called How to Win Friends and Influence People. And I'm sure somebody's going to be super generous and repeat that title into the chat for you. So objections and resistance, one of the biggest problems with them, right? As a sales guy, I don't really have a problem with them because I have 30 years of experience dealing with them. And remember, half the bell curve is never going to buy from me. So I have to go in, meet them, hear their objections, and know that they're not going to buy from me. But the real reason that they're a pain, I think, maybe to you and even to me when I go into meetings, is that they throw those meetings off track. I prepared for the meeting and expected it to go this way, and objections and resistance tend to skew it this way. I'm like, whoa, no, I was trying to go over here. And so one of the things we want to do is to pay attention that objections can throw us off track. And if we don't know what track is, what the right path is for our meetings, where we want to go, if we don't know what that is, then it's going to be so easy for us to get thrown off. But more importantly, it's going to be really hard for us to come back. Yesterday, I did training on how to control a meeting, how to get it, keep it, and regain it. So go watch that training when you get a chance to see this thought expanded into a full training session. A couple of examples, just so we're on the same page, of what I mean when I say objection or resistance. When I say objection, I mean the price is too high, right? That's an objection. Like, okay, right? And I'll talk later about how to deal with certain objections. An example of a resistance is somebody just asked me a question. I'm a small business, I'm meeting, let's say, with a large prime or something, and they asked me a question like, well, how many employees do you have? That's a question that's resistance. There's no value to them asking that question. And when they ask it in that way, it really is kind of negatively impactful to somebody like me. And so what I want to do is to avoid the price is too high objection or the resistance of how many employees do we have. And we do that by knowing that those two could possibly come up, and how would I respond to it? And I'll talk about that in a minute. Let's talk about why they come up, though. Let's expand a little bit more on that. They come up primarily because people you're meeting with lack information, and they have the free time to think about anything. And so what do they think about? They think about, well, if I have to be here, how many employees do you have? You know, are you DCAA compliant or any of these other things? So just start throwing them out. They didn't really care when they walked into the meeting. If they did care, they might have sent you an email saying, hey, by the way, how many employees do you have? Maybe I don't want to meet with you if you have one employee. But that didn't come up. And so it only came up really because they're lacking any kind of information, or you're not in control of the meeting, or they have just way too much free time, which is that lack of control as well. Another massive reason why they come up is people are thinking about risk, right? And if you control a meeting, they think a little less about risk on their own, and you guide them to talk about the risks they're concerned about. So just really quick, if you're not familiar with this whole idea of risk management, I minimize risk management down into a risk is something that could go wrong. So an example is my house could burn down because I left the iron plugged in, right? That's the issue. A risk is the chance of that happening. So there's a risk. There's three ways I can address that risk. I can avoid it by unplugging the iron, making sure it's cool before I even leave the house, right? I avoided the risk completely. I can mitigate it. When it lights on fire and get in there with the fire extinguisher, which is a bad idea, but, and put it out and deal with it. Or I can accept it. I can sit there and watch my house burn down because I left my iron plugged in. Or I can accept that risk when I leave and I drive away and go, I'm not coming back to look at it, right? So with every risk, you can avoid it, you can mitigate it, do something about it when it happens, or you can just accept that it's going to happen. If you think about sales objections, it's kind of that same thing, right? Is I can avoid that objection, and I'll give you a couple of tips on how to avoid an objection. I can address it. So when the objection comes up in the meeting, I can be prepared to address it. I know how. It's called risk mitigation. In this case, objection handling. right? I don't like objection handling because I'm accepting the risk. I'd rather avoid the risk or avoid the objection. So I can address it when it comes up, or I can react and address it poorly, right? That is that's kind of like accepting the iron is going to burn the house down. I can just wing it when I get in there and address it poorly and let the meeting go off track. One of the other reasons risks or objections come up, and why people might be a little bit more geared towards resisting you or having objections, and you need to handle these, respect it and then handle it, is that they meet with many people. If you're talking about large primes or agencies, they meet with hundreds of businesses out there, in particular small businesses, but they meet with many, many people who are not prepared. They didn't do their homework, and so they come in and they're just wasting their time. You're asking me, it's like, what do you guys do? Well, it's on our website. It says right here, what do we do? Well, what contract vehicles do you have? Well, these are all questions that could have been answered by going into my website. They could have been answered by going into FPDS, USA Spending, and doing some basic research. And so that's what puts the other party that you might be meeting with in the position to object or resist. Well, what you want to do is mitigate that, or avoid that by letting them know you did the homework, talked about certain things. Hey, I'm looking forward to talking with you about Oasis, because I know that you're on there. I know you guys have been winning 3 or 4 contracts in the last year. They're going to go, oh, these people have done their homework, right? You can control a meeting by informing people and bringing them on. The last reason they come up is that the people you're going to meet with, they don't know you, they don't like you, and they don't trust you. And I don't mean that in an active way, like they don't trust you. They don't trust you because they don't know you. They don't like you because they don't know you. If you're going into a meeting blind and they don't know, like, and trust you, then the likelihood that you're going to get objections or resistance massively goes up, compared to if you take the time before you have meetings to get them to know, like, and trust you. And you can do that pretty involved in the way I do with this training, for example. Every day I'm here, you're able to determine whether you know, like, and trust me by me coming to you every day. You can do this by sending a white paper or a video on a particular topic, engaging them on LinkedIn. There's all sorts of things you can do to get the person you're going to meet, especially first time, to know, like, and trust you along the way, so that when you walk into a meeting, you're meeting with somebody you've met with for a while, even though it was virtual or not even actually one-to-one, but just kind of passing in the social media world. This morning, I met with a potential customer on a workshop I'm doing for small businesses. And one of the things I was in particularly really proud to hear them say is, look, we don't have any questions about you. We know, basically they said, we know, like, and trust you. What we want to know is about the program, right, that you're talking about, the workshop. And we were able to have the meeting about that. That's what I want for you, is for when you're going in, the way you avoid any kind of objections or resistance is to make sure you're doing everything you could do to do your homework or helping them know, like, and trust you. Okay, so I want to move into some tips on what you can do in advance of a meeting to overcome objectives or avoid objections, and then what you can do when you're in the meeting itself. But before I do, I wanted to ask you, because I want this to be a little bit more dynamic, put in the chat any objections you might be running into, right? If you have meetings with large primes, other smalls you might be meeting with, if you're meeting with small business specialists or contracting officers in an agency, whatever it is, if you've been running into certain resistance or objections, you feel like, I'm doing this, but they're just not giving me what I want from an objection standpoint or resistance standpoint, put that into the comments, because I want to save time at the end to be able to address a couple that you might put in. If I don't get to them all, by the way, I will come back and just put replies into the comment, but I do want to look in. Gus is going to watch that and let me know which ones are going in. Okay, so let's talk about things you can do in advance. I say days in advance, but it can be continuously in advance. So it could be months in advance. You're building a lot of relationships and trust out there with people. But in particular, days in advance with a meeting with John, right? You're going to meet with John here. One of the first things that I would recommend you do is to make sure you clarify the purpose with John, right? So you're scheduling a meeting, maybe you're jumping on and you're doing the email invite, or it's in the calendar. Put that purpose in there. And if you haven't watched my video training on doing a call plan where you talk about the purpose, you understand the purpose and objective of your meeting, that purpose you want to share with John early on. The other thing you might do, and I used to love doing this, is I'd schedule a meeting, it's locked down, and then 3-4 days before the meeting, maybe the week before, I reach out to John and I just call him cold because now I got it. And when I call John, I say, John, we got a meeting scheduled next week. I was wondering, do you have 5 or 10 minutes? I just wanted to clarify the purpose from my perspective for next week's meeting, so I make sure I'm prepared to talk in the direction, both what I want and what you would value, right? And now I take 5 or 10 minutes. He's only going to talk about that if he talks to me at all, but it's a great way to clarify the purpose with him. Expanding on that, right? I just said a call plan and the purpose is on there. Make sure you have a call plan. If you prepare the call plan in advance, you are setting yourself up for a much more likely chance of succeeding in that call, both for you and the other person. Whenever I talk about a successful meeting or be in control, it's for the value of you and John, right? Win-win. I am never a fan of lose-win on either side. Don't sacrifice yourself and don't take from John. Both of you should be able to win in a meeting. He gets what he wants, you get what you want. The last thing that I would recommend, last tip really quick on advance, is create a list of objections and grow it. So growing it means anytime you hear new ones, put them into your list, right? People are going to put comments in here with some objections, and I'm going to grow that list of objections I have that I'm teaching people how to overcome from your suggestions. But when you go into a meeting, if you run into an objection, make sure you take a note, just like you would an action item. Write down OBJ, right? And then put a thing down. How big are you? Are you DCAA compliant? Why do you use Oracle instead of Microsoft? Whatever it is, having that down will help you prepare the next time. You understand this. We're not as good today as we will be tomorrow because we always have the benefit of yesterday's experience. And if you take a note, you'll be able to do really well with that. Okay, so these are things you can do in advance. In the meeting, this is a part that's really important to me for avoiding objections. Is when I get in there, I like using the call plan, right? I talk about the call plan all the time. And so what I want you to do is to address the objections right in the first few minutes. Some objections you might have to handle as you go along because it just doesn't make sense the same in the beginning. But an example, one way to handle a whole bunch of objections without naming them is to say, look, I've got this call plan, right? And I really want to make sure I'm making use of your time. And if I actually called them and clarified the purpose before, now I'm saying, hey, I got this call plan. I'm going to use it as a way to guide me so I get out of this what I'm looking for and to make sure I'm maximizing the use of your time and not wasting your time. When you talk about call plans like this and you're talking to the other person, make sure you say, is that okay with you, John? Sure. Okay, well, let me just clarify the purpose of what I'm aiming for. So, if you've got something you want to add in, we can, but otherwise we're driving to this. The purpose of the meeting to me, from my perspective, is, we do data analytics. So I want to briefly introduce you to data analytics, but most importantly, I want to talk about this particular aspect today. And I've got some questions around that. First question, John, is that okay? And second question, anything else you'd like to add to that? And generally what happens is, and when I say generally, it's like 99% of the time of the meetings that you're the one instigating, they'll just say, sounds good, let's do it. And they'll appreciate that sorry about that. They'll appreciate that you're in control, right? And so you've clarified the purpose with them right in the first 60 seconds, first couple of minutes if you're chit-chatting or something. But the next thing you say is you clarify even more by saying, look, the reason I'm here is to do my homework. And I'm telling you right now, if you're there and it's the first meeting in particular of your new relationship, you better be thinking you're only there to do homework and to learn. Seek first to understand, then to be understood, as Stephen Covey says, right? You're not there to sell. You don't need to try to swing you don't even want to get on bases. You just want to know if you can come to the game and whether you sit in the stands or in the dugout, right? But you're just trying to get to know them. And so you want to make sure that they feel that you're in that learning mode. You're in that, hey, we want to talk mode, and not in a sales mode. When people meet salespeople the first time before they get to know you, we tend to have a little bit of what's coming at us, where's the other shoe type thing. Well, we let them know, look, I definitely would love to sell you something down the road, but right now I'm here to do my homework, John. I want to learn about your agency or your team, your organization, right? Because this works with companies or agencies. It's all the same when it comes to people and managing the expectations in there. The last part in that first 60 seconds that I'm talking about is to solicit their help. I've already alluded to this left and right where I say, I'm going to cover this purpose. John, is that okay? The last thing I ask for when I'm talking about a call plan is, John, I really want to keep us on track. We only got a 30-minute meeting. By the way, my first meetings are always 30 minutes. I never make them more than that. Otherwise, they just take up too much time, right? And so you want to be able to come back for a second meeting if it makes sense. But John, we only got 30 minutes, actually like 25 minutes left. I'm going to try to stick to this. Is it okay with you if we start kind of going off track that I just redirect us back onto the, onto the call plan, onto the agenda? Sure. No, go ahead. Everybody will say, no, that's fine. We like to be feeling like we're part of the participating, making sure the meeting is staying on track. It's going where it needs to go. No one else is going to meet with you and come in with the desire to waste their time. Right. And so if they're looking at the purpose as this, then they will want to stay on track. If they've got something else they want to get out of it, like, look, I really think you could fit here and I want to ask you a bunch of questions, then when you're clarifying the purpose with them, they'll provide that input. I want to ask you about your company and whether you might be a fit for us. It's like, well, great, John, I was just here to do my homework, but I'll be happy to sell you something, right? So let me pause for a second. I know there was a couple of objections come in. I want to talk about how I might handle those directly. By the way, as I'm looking at that, the first one I wanted to just say really quick, let me bounce my screen back so I'm looking. If somebody says, if somebody asks me about the price, I always say, if somebody's focused on the price, the value wasn't proven. I talked this morning about, I had this meeting and somebody did ask me about the price, but when they did, it was just a fact. They had already understood the workshop and understood the value, and the price is just one more piece of information. That's different than the price being an objection, right? When somebody asks you the price right away, they're resisting it. They're not seeing the value in there, and they've switched over from caring about making a decision on value to their organization, and they've switched to what's the price and do I want to pay it? Well, you would never want to pay $5 if you haven't seen the value of the Starbucks coffee or whatever. So the thing to keep in mind is the way you avoid a price conversation is you come in, focus on this desire to talk about how what you're doing can help them with their goals, not your goals. You don't want to sell a product for no reason. We're trying to address a need in there. Let me look. So Elizabeth asked, price much lower than the competitors, too small a business. Actually, I skipped the first one, but that's all right. So if I'm following the question, somebody's saying I'm too small of a business. That's an objection. I'm going in there and they're going to say that. My first thing is, if you're actually too small and you've got no federal experience, sub as a prime, whatever, then don't go knocking on the largest door. There's no reason they should go with you. You're just nothing but a risk. There are many, many firms that are between 5 and 20 million that could easily use your support. But when you knock on those doors, they're not thinking the same risk. They're not thinking of the same risks as a large. A large instantly is saying you're small. A small will look at you and go, oh yeah, we used to be your size, right? So there's some understanding of it. Plus they're more open to it generally. So make sure you're knocking on the right door. The other part of it is price much lower than competitors. If you're saying that your price is too much lower, then I would raise your price. Never, ever, ever lower your rates. Give people more value, but don't lower your rates. I'm not quite sure what that one is, but again, it comes back to this idea of make sure that when you're talking about anything that you do, that you're talking about how fast they can get it, the schedule, the cost of it, and the scope of it, right? That's project management, scope, cost, and schedule. And so really address that and make sure you're addressing the value you bring. Most small businesses in particular, the value you bring is 10, 20 years of experience doing this professionally. And now you're in a small business. You're not too small. You're actually the right size because you have the ability to change with the speed of relevancy. When things go wrong with the large prime or the government, you can change rapidly where large could not. Elizabeth or Susan talks about request on current information. So Susan, can you clarify with me in the comments? Just let me know. Are you talking about that they're asking for too much information in the RFI and RFQ? I'm going to come back to that one because that one's not totally clear to me. Tim asked about how many employees do you have? This happens a lot, right? And so here's the thing. If you're under 10 employees, again, Don't go knocking on a large's door unless you are Apple making iPhone, right? And no one has a smartphone. Then go knocking on a large's door or even an agency's door. But if you're a one-person shop, like if I just, there's somebody in this community I know, there's multiple people who are one people thick or deep, right? But I know that they're experts at a level that's equal to any large out there. You need to go in and not sell yourself as a small, but sell yourself as an expert in elevators or artificial intelligence or cybersecurity, because that's the value you're bringing. Hey, I wanted to let you, and by the way, the way I avoid it is we are definitely small, but I bring 30 years of or 20 years of experience in the Air Force and 10 years outside the Air Force. And now I've started my own company and I'm building it. I'm looking to build it as a subcontractor under you. Are you open to that conversation? Remember the bell curve. 50% are going to say no, but 50% will be interested in you at just different stages. And so it's okay to say you're small. Don't hide it. The way you avoid the discussion is to say, I have, and I did this on my, you can go back and learn this later, but on my 5th company, I started it really quick before I started the GovCon Chamber. I did exactly that. Brand new company, it's just me, but I have 20 years of SharePoint experience and I want to sit there and sub under you for the next couple of years and get experience for my company. Are you open to that conversation? They were open to the conversation. That objection was handled, right? I don't hide that I'm small. I actually highlight it as a strength. Ted says an objection to teaming with a small business. Part of this comes back, Ted, to small or large, like I just said. I need companies with relevant past performance. So this is really important, right? If you're really small, then the only value you're bringing is your skill set. So go to another small business that has a complementary set of skills and you'll be able to get in. The objection won't even come up. When you go to a larger company and they're looking for past performances and the teammates they have are going to be adding a past performance, well, you don't have it. Large businesses are looking for small businesses, not that are WSBs. They're looking for small businesses that have a vehicle they don't, that have access to an agency they don't through past performances, right? Or that have skill sets that the large doesn't have, or a set of experience around that skill set. If you don't have that, the larges aren't really going to be interested, right? There's one-off exceptions, but the norm is they're not going to be interested. But if you go to the right door, they will open it and they will welcome you, and they will not be asking about past performances. I introduced 2 different companies into one of my other customers who was going after a $200 million opportunity. They have minimal work share in there, and all this Prime was looking at is you're an expert at ServiceNow or you're an expert at SharePoint. And that's what attracted them in. They don't get a huge chunk of that 200 million, but they get a piece of it. And since they're so small, that piece is a big step up. So understand which door to knock on. Eric mentioned, and I'm down to the last 2 minutes here, small businesses are too risky to use on mission critical work because they lack internal governance and focus. So Eric, there's a lot of different things in there, but let's just say that the reason I, as a small business, are so much better than anybody else is I just came out of the government. I just spent 20 years working on that exact same mission critical system, and I'm over here. You, of course, need to put in CMMC, the cybersecurity maturity model certification, or NIST guidelines, and then you, of course, need to run your business, but your business is so small, the tools you need are so minimal to get in. But if you go find the right teaming partner, you can ask them to help you kind of strengthen your back office, and I will bring 20 years of experience in that system. If you have no experience in that system, then their objection is legitimate, and maybe you're asking to get into the wrong project. You need to start on non-mission critical and then work your way to mission critical systems once you get in and you're subbing. Trying one more with Susan. We've submitted and look into the status of those submissions. So Susan, I'm going to follow back up with you and try to figure out what your question is. I'll go offline and then come back and comment inside. We're at the bottom of the hour, coming down. So we talked about objections and resistance. One of the last tips I just want to leave with you is if you create a call plan and engage the other person that we're going to talk about this call plan's purpose, right? Do we agree on it? Then that's one of the best ways to overcome objections. Make sure you're keeping a list of objections because you can respond to it in your dialogue, like when you introduce yourself. But generally, if you stick to a call plan and tell them, I just want to stick to this area, you begin to minimize the talk about price and size, and you come in and talk about artificial intelligence or this expertise or that. Hey, government contracting, it's not a secret. It's just a process. Part of the process is ending meetings on time. So I will see you in the next training event. Have a great weekend.